I'm Dave Schulman, one of the chess presidents, and this is a session where we're going to talk to some chess leadership and get to know people a little bit better. We're here with Dr. Lisa Moores. Lisa, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Dave.
So why don't we start with letting everybody out there in the real world know a little bit about yourself.
How long do you have?
I got a while. They may not, but
I've got. You'd say that.
I've got plenty of time.
What do you want to know? I'm currently the Associate Dean for Assessment at America's Medical School, we like to say, the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences. I spent 30 years as an Army physician, pulmonary critical care. I trained at the old Walter Reed back before we merged with Navy to create Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. So I kind of glad I got through there when it was still Walter Reed Army, beat Navy. But, you know, I went to medical school at the Uniformed Services, so I really enjoy being back working at the school that gave me my degree. And as you and I have talked and kind of joked around a little bit too, I'm pretty proud of my undergrad, and I got my undergrad degree at the Ohio State University.
Which you didn't include.
Go Bucks.
You didn't include the first time we had the conversation.
But, you know,
about
the audience needs to, they won't know what I'm talking about.
Without the leading article.
Go Bucks.
Now, you and I serve on the board together currently.
Yes.
But you've had a number of other leadership roles at Chest. It's not your tendency to brag about yourself, but I'm going to give you free rein to do so. Can you give us a sense of that sort of breadth of activity that you've participated, in which you participated at Chest?
I'd say almost every committee. I like to be a worker bee. I love this organization. Really, really love it. It's been my professional home. I feel genuinely like my promotion through academic medicine was only possible because of Chest and because of the things that I was able to do with Chest, but also the relationships I built here, the mentors, the sponsorship, being able to get people to help me with my promotion, to show me how to get there, because the military can be a very insular group, and you don't have a lot of that outside perspective to tell you what you need to do, and yet although we're a military medical school, they do expect that sort of broad look to get promoted. So I started very early on. I think my introduction was as a fellow. When I would come to the annual meeting, I always wanted to get a case report accepted for the affiliates competition, as we called it back then, and that was so much fun. Being able to meet the experts that they would bring in to listen to our case reports, and were so welcoming and so approachable. You know, as a fellow, just having, you know, these giants in chest medicine treating me like I was royalty.
Which is only funny because I sort of felt that way about you. I had quizzed you a little earlier, or sort of warned you I was going to ask this, if you remember the first time we met, because I know I remember it quite vividly, because I perceived you like you have now referenced some of these other sort of giants of chest medicine. So I won't put you on the spot. It was early 2000s. I was right out of fellowship, or relatively proximately out of fellowship. It was one of the postgraduate courses that Chest used to do, and they've recently started doing it on leadership development. And you were one of a modest number of speakers. You were there in your sort of military dress, blues or gray. Blue or gray, I don't know what it was. But you spoke very passionately about your sort of, again, we were all a little younger back then.
And I was still very junior faculty.
Right. But I recall very vividly that I knew your name because, you know, maybe you're not as famous then as you are now, but you were still fairly well known for relatively junior faculty. And I remember thinking how approachable you were. And I felt the same way about other speakers. I remember Nancy Collett. That was the first time I met Nancy, was at that leadership development session.
Nancy was someone that did that for me.
So I could not agree more with what you've said about Chest being an opportunity to meet people. I've always found it a very personal society, almost everybody's quite approachable.
Yes.
And I think we're very supportive of each other. Of late, you've started to get your fingers a little bit more into this guidelines piece, and I want to spend some time. So you've always been very involved in guidelines. Thrombotics, I think, is sort of your the fight against fight against thrombosis. But what is your current role on the Guidelines Oversight Committee?
I am currently the vice chair of the Guidelines Oversight Committee. I will be taking over as chair in January when we go through our leadership cycle change. I would say that I was interested in the guidelines from the beginning just because CHEST was the guideline for antithrombotics. And my area of expertise, my area of interest, my research was all in venous thromboembolism. And it was really cool to see that internationally, the guideline that everybody went to was CHEST's guideline. And there were others out there, and that there still are. But I think we have the marquee one in thrombosis, and I've always been really proud of it. I wasn't really involved in it until we did I say the 9th edition, so back in 2012. And I talk about imposter syndrome. I mean, I was the least experienced person on that panel. And I ended up on a chapter that I was not an expert in. It was on the heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, and I was like, I don't know anything about this other than obviously managing it.
Right.
But I was there because of that. I didn't have any conflicts in that area, and they needed an unconflicted panelist on that. But that was my foot in the door. And fast forward a couple years, we didn't like the way that process went in terms of it was led a little bit too heavily by methodologists, and we wanted to make a change. And the current CHEST leadership, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Darcy at the time, who was either president.
Darcy being
Darcy Marcinick.
Darcy Marcinick,
now
former
one of
CHEST
our
president.
Master Fellows. It was either president or was going to be, and he sat with me with the current chair of the GOC and said, "We'd like you to take over the antithrombotics." And I remember looking around the room like, "Where's the camera? This is the biggest. This has got to be."
You did not feel ready for
Oh, I was not ready, but it got handed to me as we were trying to move into sort of a new living guidelines model. So, and I think once I saw how that process worked, then I wanted to be part of the committee to help shape the next steps.
You mentioned opening the door, getting in the door. I think that's something that a lot of folks who are a little bit more junior at CHEST, either fellows or junior faculty, want to know a little bit more about, because guidelines, as you nicely said, are something we're particularly well known for. Talk to us a little bit about the guidelines process in just a minute or so. Like, what does it take to get a guideline proposed? How do we decide what guidelines we're going to do? And what's that process of kind of moving them through the process from getting proposed to approved to actually getting public?
So that process has evolved over the years as well. And we put a new one in place recently that I think brings in all the best practices we've had in the past. So it's not that it's that much different. We have several what we would call our key portfolios that we really want to make sure we maintain. Antithrombotics portfolio being one of them, lung cancer guidelines, our cough guidelines have always been another really key set of guidelines for the organization. We feel that because at times the resources have been constrained, that we've ended up that sometimes those are our only guidelines are in those areas. And we really wanted to diversify the portfolio to represent all the areas that CHEST members are, interested in, involved in, and to more closely parallel our curricular pillars and the pillars that the journal have. So we are branching out into, ILD, airways disorders, critical care, sleep.
These are things currently in the workings?
That we have added to the portfolio and are now in the works, and we're doing it through two processes. One is through what we're calling sort of an RFP that we put out to the networks saying, please give us topic proposals within this pillar. And then those are really easy to do. Anyone that's involved with the network can get either whether they're on their steering committee or they can talk to the steering committee. And it's really a 2-page process saying, this is my idea, this is the gap, this is why I think we need a guideline in this area. Not a ton of work. Those initial 2-pagers get reviewed, and then several are asked to submit a little bit more fleshed out proposal. Who would the chairs be? That could be the person proposing it. Who would be on the panel? And with some guidance from the committee on how to create a panel, what kind of diversity we need there, what the questions would be, what clinical questions are you answering, and eventually we will pick one of those in each area for each year. But in terms of getting involved, it would be They can propose one of these. They can work within their networks to say, if we have a topic accepted, I would like to be one of the panel members. So learning how to be on the panel, I think those would be some easy first steps to get involved. They could also try to, be involved with the Guidelines Oversight Committee itself when there are openings through the regular nomination process, because many of our GOC members don't necessarily have experience on a panel yet. That's not a prerequisite.
So the first process you said is identify a potential clinical gap where there isn't a lot of evidence, but something that has a clinical conundrum or some uncertainty in terms of optimal practice, and write up this sort of 2-page proposal working through the network model, meaning touching base with the steering committee chair in that space, steering committee members in that space, and the 2-pager is not a huge amount of work,
No.
it sounds like. And I can't, so I love that idea, because the best way to get involved is to actually put something forward.
Mm-hmm.
The number of people who don't, you and I talked a little bit, put up their hand
Raise
and
your
say, I
hand.
want to try this. There is a little bit of activation energy required to put that 2-page proposal, but it's not a 25-page grant proposal.
Right.
And so that's something that would then get reviewed by GOC, potentially approved, ask for more information, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about the other piece, because about the GOC itself. So how big is it? And if somebody wanted to run for a position, what is the ideal candidate? I mean, there probably isn't one ideal candidate, but what is the diversity of candidates for which you're looking to sit on the GOC? What are the key criteria? How do they get to know you? How do they build that skill set that you might be looking for?
It's a great question, Dave, and one that we've sort of grappled with within the committee. We've sort of gone back and forth quite a bit. Are we looking for people with expertise in certain clinical areas? So as I was mentioning, we're diversifying the portfolio. Do we need members of the Oversight Committee that represent those different areas? Do we need someone who focuses mainly on sleep medicine? Do we need someone who is focusing on interstitial lung disease? Because they would potentially serve as liaisons to those guideline working groups and panels as they develop the guideline. Or do we want people that really, independent of their content expertise, understand the approach to evidence-based medicine, have some interest in doing systematic reviews, meta-analyses, have done some of them in the past as part of their research, as part of their work in whatever area they're doing, again, even if it's in a different area of content than perhaps one of the guidelines that's being started. We're really settling on a mixture of both.
They don't have to have the expertise in methodology.
They don't.
If they're if they're aggressive, dynamic, have the energy and potentially the time. That's the hard part.
Right, and they want to help us really keep the CHEST standard alive. We feel we have very high standards in our guidelines, and we're very conscious of conflict of interest and making sure that the questions are developed appropriately and to the best of our ability, making recommendations that are actually you're able to implement. There are going to be times where it just is gray and there's shared decision making with the patient and there's no way around that, but then trying to give as much context to the practitioner in how they use that information to talk to the patient. But wherever possible, making it fairly clear that actually this is really the way you should go if there's no reason not to, and making that easy.
Yeah.
So it's that combination of are you really interested? I considered myself sort of an evidence-based geek, regardless of area, and that was what got me interested in guidelines also. We have people like that, and we have people that just want to serve CHEST and have an area of interest that aligns with some of our guidelines.
So it sounds like two ways that potentially enter this arena. One is if you've identified an area of clinical interest where there's a little equipoise in a piece, you can write a 2-page proposal with the assistance of your steering committee. Alternatively, the GOC, there are members of the GOC presumably on these writing committees, but the GOC predominantly is overseeing the choice of which ones we're writing. So 2 ways to get involved.
Really oversees them.
Okay.
We, as I sort of mentioned, we do have a liaison to each guideline panel, each guideline that's under development. It's up to that GOC member as to what level they want to get involved. If they have a real interest in that area and they want to be a full-fledged panel member, in such that they would be part of the writing and be, somewhere in that authorship line, they can do that. If they want to take sort of I'm just going to ensure that you're following chest policy, they could do that, and they might be acknowledged but not be an author, and then there's something in between. So they have that opportunity to be involved at whatever level they would feel comfortable with. We are also telling GOC members that when we do get some that are just really interested and want to maybe someday be able to be the person, the methodologist for a guideline, that we would give them the training and the experience to do that.
And that's
so that we expand that pool.
Yeah, and that's something very cool. I know that we offered a course last year, 2 years ago, in the methodology piece, and it wasn't incredibly well subscribed, but I think those who did subscribe to it felt like they got a ton out of it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more question in this space, then we're
Okay.
going to go to a speed round. This is not about GOC, but about a variety of other things.
Okay,
And I'm sure you're super, super excited about that. So if somebody wants to learn more, are there GOC meetings that people can attend? Are there individuals to whom they can reach out to just, even by email to get some more information on the website, anything like that?
Well, as we've talked about, I don't know that there's a single leader at Chess that isn't approachable, and we have all of our members on the site. They can reach out to me at any time. Our outgoing chair is Kevin O'Neill, who would be happy to talk to anybody. We have a new director of guideline development at Chess, Dr. John Iacarino. John is fantastic. He's currently at BU, but also now working for Chess. John would be happy to talk to anybody.
Great.
Our staff members, so Leanne Fulton or Emily Petraglia, any of us.
Emily does everything, as you
Yes,
know.
and they certainly could then reach out to any members of the current members of the GOC. Dr. Angel Coz is actually on the GOC, but also the chair of the Council of Networks. So the folks that are in the networks could reach out to Angel to get a sense for what it's like to be on the GOC.
So it sounds like the biggest gap is just that first step of reaching out. And again, because there is activation energy, there's this perception that they're not looking for someone like me. I think a lot of people feel that way, and as a result, we probably don't get the breadth of applications, proposals that we potentially could, given the breadth of our membership.
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about this. Sometimes I feel a little guilty. I really think that when I was at that junior level like you, just coming out of fellowship, the affiliate committee was somewhat, it wasn't...
Now it's called the TNT.
Now it's called the Training and Transitions Committee, and it was the affiliate committee, then it became a network, and then it went to TNT. But it was, I don't think, quite as competitive, and because I had been involved as a fellow in the process, that there was that opportunity to be on the affiliate committee. I don't think that there are openings quite as often anymore that are easy, and I don't want young members to get discouraged when they put in an application and they're not selected. We sometimes, I remember on the education committee, but now on GOC, we will have 10 to 12 or more sometimes applications for one opening. So I would really encourage them to also look at the work groups for all of these committees, because that's a great way to think about, as we talked about earlier, being on one of the guideline panels, because certainly once you've been involved in the development of one of our guidelines from start to finish, that's an incredible experience and wealth of knowledge that the GOC would look upon very favorably when there are openings. And it's sort of building that resume so that when there are 10 to 12 to 1, you're the one. I still firmly believe, though, that if you just keep raising your hand and saying, I want to be involved, I will help, tell me, even if it's just helping you behind the scenes with some of the
People
crossfire.
remember that.
Yes.
People remember that.
Yes.
And it does. I think John Hunninghake did a great session, one of the junior faculty getting more involved at Chess. It wasn't that long ago, he was a senior fellow, did a great session last year on failure. And I think the problem is people look at you, maybe they look at me, although I don't feel it, and they look at their CVs and they're like, wow, this person's never failed at anything. But the story I often share is it took me 8 tries to get on the education committee. And for my first leadership position at Chest was on Sleep Network, but I was an afterthought. They had rejected me, and then I guess later on a position opened up. They're like, well, this guy's still available. Let's get him. Let's draft him. All right. So as we now move into the speed round, we're gonna have to pick up the pace. Favorite flavor of ice cream and why?
Peppermint patty. From Friendly's.
That's a flavor?
From Friendly's.
Okay.
Oh, it's either peppermint patty or peppermint stick. It's been so long. I was a kid. They only brought it out during the holidays. And so I had a favorite of theirs, but it was available all year round. And peppermint stick was only, November through early January. And it had little crunchy pieces of peppermint in it.
I think Friendly is a regional place, but I think it's gone under now. I feel like it's not available anymore. All right.
You can get their ice cream in the grocery store.
What is the movie that when you're browsing the TV channels and you see it, you're like, I know I've seen this a dozen times before, but I got to hang out here for a few
Sweet Home Alabama.
Now that's not something I would have guessed. Why?
Such a great movie.
This is with Reese Witherspoon, right? Where she's kind of going back to her. Okay.
Yes. I can give you so many lines from that movie.
I trust that you can, and I'm not sure either me or the audience really wants
I don't
to.
know.
Right
It's just a feel-good story. It's got some, like I said, some amazing lines. I'm a romantic at heart. It's probably one of the few chick flicks my husband will watch with me more than once.
Oh, I'll have to mention that to him next time I see him.
Yes. Oh, yeah. He's probably seen it at least 10 times.
By choice or because he's a good
because
husband?
I put it on.
Okay, he's a good husband.
But he'll tell you it has great lines in it. He likes it too.
Okay.
And we will occasionally, there's one we love to say, and you'll have to watch the movie to see it, but we'll sort of look at each other and go, it doesn't look like it. So
I will. I've not seen it, but now when I do, I won't Google it. I'll actually watch it.
You'll see it.
TV show binging. Are you do you do the Netflix or Hulu and just binge a season of something?
I wouldn't call myself a binger, but because I just don't watch TV real time. So when I hear of a good show that people talk about over and over and over again, then I will, and I kind of like that because by the time I hear about it, there's 2 or 3 seasons, and I don't like being left hanging. So, but I won't watch the whole thing in a day or two. I'll watch 2 or 3 episodes, and then
so
the next time.
What was the most recent one that met those criteria?
This Is Us.
Really? That's actually still on. It's on
it is.
NBC,
so now I don't like it because now I'm caught up.
Yeah, that's the worst.
And that's the worst.
We've gotten so spoiled. Remember when that didn't exist and we had to wait every week?
As a
now
family,
we're so spoiled.
we binged when the kids were a little bit younger, high school age. We binged 24 those seasons.
That was for the first few years. That
we
was very
stayed up
good.
all night as a family a couple times.
You actually did 24 and 24. That would be cool.
We did.
Okay.
And then we binged all of the Alias seasons too. As a
very
family.
good. Yeah. Song that when it comes on, regardless of where you are, you're going to sing along to it. What's that guilty pleasure sort of song for you that either is from your youth or not?
You don't want me. Let's just say you don't want me to sing along to anything.
I'm not going to make you sing it. I won't make you sing it.
No,
At least I'm going to tell you now I'm not going to make you sing it. I
used to sing along at the top of my lungs in the car when I was in high school, but it was just my friend and I going at 4 a.m. to the swim team practice.
I'm not familiar with this term 4 a.m. I'm sorry.
It was any one of REO Speedwagon.
Oh.
So
that Wheels Are Turning album, I must have played that on cassette tape indefinitely. I played that a long time.
That would be.
All right. Favorite place you've traveled and what?
My favorite place is, other than just like family vacation spots, my favorite travel place is Italy.
My wife would agree.
I just love Italy.
Lisa, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your leadership. And you, as I said to you earlier, have been a wonderful mentor to me and so many other faculty. So
thank you.
Thanks for your service to Chess, your service to the country, and everything you've done. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.